Oh, absolutely. Welcome to Overdrive. Jim, Tatti and Dave Feschuk with you, subbing for O-Dog, Hayes, and Noodles on a really fantastic day, considering what Canada women's soccer team just did. 1-0 over Colombia and advancing to the quarters. Dave, welcome. How are you today, sir?
Mr. Tatti, who needs a coach? Who needs, like function when you can have dysfunction and an us against the world mentality like the Canadian women's soccer team is showing us?
Well, I mean, they focused on the game and they had to. The distraction level had to be severe. The day starts with going against the appeal. The appeal was ruled no. They didn't get the 6 points back or any of the 6 points back. So I don't know exactly what they knew when they took to the pitch, but they played like they had to win the game, and that's what they had to do, and that's what they did. There's stuff that comes out of that appeal that we'll get into later on. I don't want to ruin the celebratory moment, but there's some layers here that are kind of alarming. We'll get to them. In terms of other Olympic stuff going on, Felix Auger-Aliassime beat Medvedev in the Olympics to advance to the quarterfinals in men's tennis, singles tennis, and that's the first time Felix has defeated Medvedev. He'd been 7-0 in previous attempts, or 0-7, I guess is the right way to say it. And a gold medal for Canada. Ilya Haroun wins the Olympic bronze in the 200-meter butterfly. So a busy day, but certainly the soccer team, the women's soccer team, grabs the headline. And, I mean, this is inspirational, at least.
Well, it's inspirational for some. I think that's going to be the interesting angle here, is that as Canada's team takes this us against the world mentality now into the quarterfinals, they'll face Germany, the world number 4, Jim. Of course, Canada coming into this tournament ranked number 8 in the world by FIFA. I wonder if they're going to be seen as inspirational characters or if they're going to be seen more as controversial characters. The cheaters who are prospering at the Olympics, convicted cheaters, admitted cheaters, people who, whose coach has essentially been exposed as somebody who has, openly in these emails that have now been leaked by FIFA and by Soccer Canada, has basically acknowledged that cheating was de rigueur for Canada at both the women's team and the men's team. So you can say everybody's doing it. Certainly that's going to be the defense of a lot of the defenders of the program. But Canada got caught doing it. But that, Jim, should not take away from the way these women are playing, because they are absolutely playing out of their mind right now. It is inspiring to watch. I don't think the players should be blamed for the sins of their administrators. And they certainly are really acquitting themselves in an amazing way.
It would be an interesting conversation to talk to any one of those players or the coaching staff that's still there to understand exactly what they knew, exactly what the focus was, because certainly in the last 2 games, the last 2 matches, they were able to do it at the right moment. I mean, you're a little concerned at halftime in both those games, but at the right moment, the right things happened. And I mean, there is, in spite of all that stuff that you detailed there's a feeling that this team is rising above, maybe a monumental rise above circumstance to get this done, and the whole country's behind them.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see. I mean, Vanessa Gilles, what a story she is. To have your center back, score the big goal against France late in extra time to give you the must win in a 2-1 victory, and then to have Vanessa Gilles, your center back, score the only goal today in another must win. And not only is she scoring goals, Jim, she's given us the Phil Esposito press conference, the incredible rallying cry of, we're not cheaters. Like we're being treated like we're dopers, and we're not. And, we just want to play. We're going to play, and we're going to win. And here they go with a chance to defend that gold medal when everybody counted them out.
Yeah, it's just an inspirational story. Love it, and we'll get into more of it. Claire Rustad will be by at 6:05. Former Canada soccer member, got into the quarters in 2008, so she was part of the TV broadcast. We'll hear from her and get into all that the other stuff. It's nasty stuff, but we have to address it. Steve Phillips will be by very shortly to talk about the Major League Baseball trade deadline. We've got Yes Guy, No Guy at the bottom of the hour at 6:30. Rod Black will be by. And we're going to talk about men's basketball. Next stop for them, Friday morning against Spain, right? So 11 o'clock, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one. I mean, Spain is they're not the Spain of the golden age of Spanish basketball, Jim, but they They still drive and kick like very few teams. They had 13 threes the other day, beating Greece. So they're a threat. We needed a really good performance to beat Spain at the World Cup last September. I remember, you had that Dylan Brooks three-pointer that was huge. You had, obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander making some big buckets down the stretch, but will not be an easy game against the former Raptors assistant Sergio Scariolo and Spain.
There's some great storylines here. I mean, obviously, at the top of the pile is Canadian women's soccer team. Nobody's going to take that away from them. The men's basketball team, you go back to that second half in their last game. I mean, that was against Australia. That was really well coached, really well executed. You could see them rise to the occasion, and battle through. I mean, let's face it, the FIBA game is quite a bit more aggressive than you get in the NBA, which is quite a statement, but it's a different brand of basketball, but they were able to figure that out. And with that game on the line, really went to work and defended extremely well.
Yeah, that to me was the story of the game, Jim. They scored 28 points off of turnovers that they forced, most of them. And, you got to give credit, to the FIFA, sorry, we're talking FIBA and FIFA. We're talking basketball now, that's FIBA. And Canada has a team built in some ways for FIBA. And we might not have the size, we might not have that presence in the lane where there's no defensive 3 seconds, but we do have aggressive perimeter defenders, man. And the way Lou Dort came out in that second half and locked down Josh Giddey, who'd been torching Canada in the first half, that was a signature performance by him. And I think Canada kind of asserting itself as a defensive power on the perimeter really is a great credit to Jordi Fernandez, the coach, and, of course, to the personnel on that squad led by Lou Dort, Dylan Brooks, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and on down the line. There's tremendous buy-in there to play on the tougher side of the ball.
Okay, let's veer off and deal with Major League Baseball. Trade deadline, as you are all aware, was at 6 o'clock last night. And so when the smoke clears, the Jays made 8 trades, brought in 14 players in the deals. Let's bring in now on the Maple Toyota hotline, Steve Phillips, our baseball insider. Steve, welcome. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you guys.
Our pleasure to have you. So 8 trades, 14 players in the deal that come back, and for the most part, all expiring contracts except for Nate Pearson on the way out. So what was your assessment of what the Jays did there, and how does it set them up for what happens next?
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. I do. I think they did an excellent job. The Kikuchi deal particularly, I think that they really crushed it on that. I mean, the Jake Bloss kid, was last year's draft and rapidly worked his way through the minor leagues this year, got to the major leagues, and, he needs a little more grooming, but he's got 4 pitches, can change speeds, does a nice job, he's competitive, and so he's going to be a factor as part of the rotation on the back end potentially next year, and he'll probably get some time this year too, for sure, and some starts this year, why not? And then, Joey Loperfido, when he got called up to Houston, he was leading the minor leagues in home runs. He had 13 home runs. He had the most minor leagues when he got called up when Kyle Tucker got hurt. And he's added some at the major league level. And then Will Wagner, Billy Wagner's son, has got a .424 on base percentage at AAA. Now, he doesn't have a lot of power, doesn't have a lot of speed, so he's going to have to get on base. But he's a baseball player type guy and a gritty guy and left-handed bats. That was the other thing. Is that 11 of the 13 minor league players, they had Ryan Yarbrough, the major league pitcher, coming over, but 11 of the 13 were position players, and I think it was 8 of them are left-handed bats and a switch hitter, and then a couple right-handed bats. So I do like the fact that they focus on bringing some left-handed bats into the organization. They need some balance at the major league level. They needed position players and offense, and so they focused on that. And I think, guys, the other sort of underrated thing that they did was they set out to get under the $237 million luxury tax threshold. They were over. And with the trades, I haven't seen the final calculation, but I believe it's gotten them under, which means that they won't pay a tax this year. But more importantly, it would mean that if they do go over next year and they rebuild the team and they get aggressive and they invest some money in it and they go out there and try to really put a roster together to compete, they would just be a first-time offender of the luxury tax and only pay a 20% tax on the overage instead of a 30% tax. And then the next year, if they're over, they'd only pay a 30% tax instead of a 50% tax. And so it was a really important factor in what they did, because I kept thinking, boy, I'd like to see them add. I'd like to see them buy a little bit. But I understand now why it was so important for them to cut their losses, get prospects, add to the farm system, some guys that they can trade this offseason to go get more pieces that they want, and then start to put it together next year where they've got some financial flexibility as well.
So, Steve, I guess that's sort of the sentiment that I'm hearing from real hardcore Blue Jay fans around town. They're happy that there's been a move to improve the farm system here. You get these prospects and you stock up, and that's all good. But there's real skepticism about the other half of this equation that Ross Atkins outlined, which is, yes, we didn't trade guys with a year remaining on their deals, the likes of Gausman or a Bassett, because we want to be contenders next year. And how realistic, Steve, do you think it is that this team, as bad as it is this year, as impotent as the offense has been, as troublesome as the pitching staff has been, do you really believe that they can make a compelling case to be a contender a year from now?
Well, I have to believe that Bichette's going to be better. I mean, it's not like he lost his game. So I think he's going to be good. And Vladdy has seemingly found his launch angle with his swings. Like, I'm really happy about that. He's got the launch angle that we've always hoped that he would get back to. And so those two are good. It's going to take some work. There's no question about that. They got to completely rebuild the bullpen. It can be done. It's one of I think the easier things to do is to go out there, get options. A good manager can help build that bullpen. I thought John Gibbons, by the way, was underrated during the course of the season, building the bullpen with putting guys in situations to succeed and be able to do it. And for John Schneider, that got away from him a little bit this year. Now, injuries certainly were part of that. And I think the Swanson, collapse was a big part of that too, and Meza as well. So, but I think they've got to put it back together in the bullpen. They'll need, they need Yuri Rodriguez to get himself right. Hopefully, they've lost Tiedemann for a year and Manoah for a year, but Bloss is a guy maybe they can get in the mix there. They've got some prospects now from which they have some capital to potentially make some deals, and they're going to have to spend some money, and they're going to have to get creative and find some ways to get this team going and put it back together again. But remember, the core of this team part of this year went to the playoffs in 3 of the last 4 years, and the year they didn't won 91 games. So, there are some players here. They got to get Kirk going again, and why does he not hit or drive the ball at all anymore? Springer, can he sustain this hot streak that he's been on? Varsho was good early, but he's not consistent offensively, and he may be a trade chip in some way to sort of clear it out, reconfigure, put something together. They need to get some balance to the lineup. So it's going to take work, and it cannot be like the assumption is always internal improvement. That's the assumption. That's not a plan. That's an assumption that you're going to work hard every offseason for everybody to get better. Even the players who are good, that they're going to be better. They're going to be more consistent. They're going to be able to handle a pitch they couldn't handle before, or throw a pitch they didn't throw before. But it can't be, this is our offseason plan, is internal improvement. There have got to be external improvements, different names on the roster, different structure, and they've got to keep open-minded about a complete, reconstruction where, Varsho can be moved. Now, maybe somebody would take Springer in a bad money for bad money deal, or, long-term money for long-term. Maybe you can wash some of that out and get some financial flexibility. I think that everything has to be on the table. Now, I don't mean trading Bichette and Guerrero, but I would keep it open mind if somebody had some idea about it, but I don't have a plan for that unless it's impact coming back in a reconstruction. But I think that they've got to really be creative about what they're going to do for next year, at the very least, so that the fans have some belief that it's going to be different. Because right now, everybody saw the trades, they like it, but it's going to be like, okay, so now what can we expect to be different? Because you didn't do different last year. What are you going to do different this year?
Yeah, I like exactly what you said there, because I think the fan base for different is deep in the playoffs as opposed to just getting there. They have the money to spend, but you're talking really about a philosophy that this front office has had for a while. Do you see, what gives you the confidence they're going to change?
Well, one of the things that happens in baseball is you don't change until you fail. And I don't think that, I look at it, if you get to the playoffs, you've got a chance to win a World Series. Now, nobody thought the Arizona Diamondbacks last year we're going to go to a World Series. And nobody really thought the Texas Rangers were. They lost the last 3 games in Seattle, became a wild card team, flew cross country, and then all of a sudden got hot. And so if you get in, you have a chance to win. Now, they've had early exits, but that didn't mean they didn't have a team that couldn't have gone further. It just means that they didn't. So the goal's got to be to get to the playoffs. And then once you're there, they need, and again, they need different mindset, different approach. They need to be more aggressive. They can't be cute in the playoffs. Play the playoffs like you've played during the season, not this, we're going to go only 2 times through because we got another starter available. No, let your pitcher pitch and take him out when it's time to take him out, but don't get cute that even though he's doing it great, we're going to go somewhere else. So they've got to change a mindset when they get to the playoffs, but get there first, right? I mean, look, if you get there first, you've got a shot, and then you got to figure out how you're going to play. And so, now that they've had some failure, there will be some change in their approach. And if they don't, and look, there's no way. They're smart guys, and they will change. They'll do something different. They'll do something to make this team look different, feel different, and play different next year.
Steve, you talk about change, and there are a lot of people in town who believe that nothing is going to change until some of the faces at the top of the organization change. And if you're Ross Atkins today, and he was very apologetic to the fans, took responsibility for what he called an unacceptable season, how secure are you in believing you're going to be employed in that position beyond this season?
Yeah, I think I think Ross isn't going anywhere. I don't. I'd be surprised right now. It would shock me if they made a change there. I mean, he made the deals at the trade deadline, and when I lost my job with the Mets, it was before the trade deadline. With the logic being, you can't have the guy who's on his way out make the changes that are going to be the decisions for the next guy. You might as well bring in the next guy or start the process of it. And so I'd be surprised if they make a change now. Again, it's hard because, everybody looks at success a little bit differently. And, I do have a belief that if you get to the playoffs, you've got a chance to go to the World Series. I mean, I do. I think that last year proved it. Nobody thought. I mean, if you were to seed the wild card team, all the teams made the playoffs last year. 12 teams. Arizona might have been the 12th seed of the 12 teams that got in, and they went to a World Series. And so I think that because they've gotten there 3 or 4 years, I would put more of that issue of not winning in the playoffs on the manager than I do on the general manager. I don't know that it was a roster move. I think it was some decision making. Now, the general manager has some responsibility over the manager and his decision making, and if you keep them or if you make changes there. And that part, I think, will be interesting this offseason. Now, I would suspect that since they didn't make a change during the season this year, that I don't expect them to make a change in the offseason with the manager. Ross has been pretty clear that he thinks John Snyder's done a good job, that he's a big part of the solution for things there. And so, and therefore it's going to have to really be changes with the players, because sometimes when you can't change all the players, you have to change a manager or coaches to be able to give some feel for the players too, that it's going to be different. And so they have some decisions to make about the manager and the coaching staff and everything else there. And look, I think they've got some excellent coaches there. Pete Walker's one of the best pitching coaches in the game. If they didn't want Pete Walker, he'd get a phone call that 5 minutes later for a job somewhere. Don Mattingly's a great baseball guy. But I think that somehow the message within the hitting part of it didn't go through and hasn't resonated, and for whatever reason hasn't impacted any change in performance, that they at least have to consider what they're doing in that area. Now, maybe they supplement it and add to it, but they've got to find some things that are going to be different for everybody for next year.
Steve, was there anything that happened yesterday that would have altered your World Series prediction, and did anybody mess up yesterday?
So, yeah, boy, interesting. The White Sox 3-team deal with the Cardinals and the Dodgers, I didn't quite understand. And it felt like 2 veteran general managers who took advantage of Chris Getz, the rookie GM for the White Sox. And it feels like Andrew Friedman in Los Angeles probably, knowing how 3-team deals work, was sort of the point person, because he came over with Tommy Edman and Kopech, the reliever, and a prospect. I'm thinking, how did he qualify to get a prospect as well in all of this? And so he gives up Miguel Vargas, who's, was a guy that failed for the Dodgers. And, he didn't get the job done. And effectively, they're getting Tommy Edman because Vargas couldn't get it done. And they got Edman Rosario because Vargas couldn't get it done. And so they didn't really have a need for him. So they moved him and then 2 prospects, 19-year-old prospects, down on their list a little bit. And then they get a prospect back. So effectively, they get Edman and Kopech this year and next year for both, for Vargas, who was failed for them, and net 1 prospect overall. And the Cardinals got Eric Fetty, the pitcher they wanted, and Tommy Pham, who's the guy that gets traded every year at the trade deadline. And the White Sox got back 3 prospects, but by packaging the 3 players together, Kopech, Fetty, and Pham, it reduced the value in the market. Like Kopech could have gotten 2 prospects. The 2 young guys that they got from the Dodgers, they could have gotten those 2 for Kopech alone. Then for Fetty, they could have gotten 2 or 3 prospects for him because he's an affordable pitcher who's pitched well, is under control for next year. When we saw what Kikuchi got, I'd take Fetty over Kikuchi. And so, I just think that the White Sox didn't get what they needed. The Orioles, I thought, did not address the end of the game like they needed to. They effectively took the rejected relievers from Philadelphia, Sir Anthony Dominguez and Gregory Soto, because when the Phillies upgraded the relievers, they then moved the 2 guys who weren't doing well and gave them to Baltimore. And Baltimore needed somebody to protect Craig Kimbrell at the end of the game. The Padres got mad crazy about their bullpen. They gave up 7 prospects for 2 impact relievers, and it may work for them because it allows them to shorten the game because they don't have a great pitching staff or rotation. They've had some injuries there in starting pitching, but now they've got 5 or 6 relievers that can be used every day. And so the Marlins ended up with 19 prospects in return. The Rays got a bunch of prospects, and they did a good job. The Yankees, Jazz Chisholm's pretty good for them, but they didn't get a starter. And the Dodgers got Jack Flaherty, and it felt like a steal of a deal. But what we understand now is the Yankees had an agreement on Flaherty on Monday, because remember, they scratched Flaherty from his start, the Tigers did. And what happened was Flaherty didn't pass the Yankees physical. When the Yankees doctors looked at the medicals, they backed off. And so what it did effectively is it sort of sent the Tigers reeling, and they ended up making a deal for much less in return for Flaherty than what Kikuchi got or anybody else because of the concerns around his back, that he's taken a couple injections in his back this year.
So, Steve, you talked about the Orioles maybe not getting exactly what they wanted. Didn't hurt them today. They beat the Jays 10-4. And, of course, underlining the fact that they have what many consider the best minor league system in the game. They call up Jackson Holliday, and what do you know? He provides a grand slam against the Blue Jays right out of the gate, up from the minors. When you look at, sort of where the Orioles are in terms of their developmental pipeline, and you look at the Jays, just now rebuilding theirs, how far did the Jays come? We heard they were in the bottom third, if not the bottom 5 of Major League Baseball developmental systems. How much do you think they rose, and how much of a climb is it still to get to where the Orioles are?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the way the Orioles got there was, 300 lost seasons and getting first-round draft picks, early first-round draft picks was part of it. Now we've changed the draft some to where, it's a lottery and you don't always get the first pick. And so, they've had some advantages to be able to do that. And the Jays are going to try to rebuild the farm system without rebuilding the major league team. And, that's different than what Mike Elias did going into Baltimore. And look, I don't know that the goal should be to build your farm system to have the top farm system. I want to build the major league team. And what the Rays have been able to do very successfully, and they're better than everybody at it, is they get waves of prospects that are coming. The Orioles did it by losing a lot. The Rays have done it by winning, But what they do, they make really hard decisions. So they're 3.5 games out of a playoff spot, and they trade away their starting left fielder. They trade away, their best their most veteran starting pitcher, Zach Eflin. But yet what they do is they've got a wave of guys that replace the veterans that they trade. And what they do in the trades is they replenish the next wave behind the wave that now replace the guys at the major league level. And so, there's different ways of building a team. And remembering, the goal is to have a winning major league team, not the best minor league system. I remember back in the day, in Tampa, they had a thing of, for the GM, his resume or his write up on his profile was, he's built a great organization in every area except for at the major league level. And I'm thinking, well, that's the goal. Like, you can have a good farm system and win in AAA, but the idea is you got to win at the big league level. And so, I think that I have no problem. Look, AJ Preller in San Diego, he's using his prospects to go get major league players. And I like that approach. Now, it's got to turn into a win. And so that's an important part of it. But I get prospects, and then be really good at evaluating which ones are for you and which ones are for somebody else to bring you a major league ready player in return. And those internal evaluations are critical.
Steve, thanks very much for stopping by. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always. Anytime, guys.
Steve Phillips joined us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander. In stock, ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Wow. I mean, that's an extensive half hour, isn't it?
It certainly was. Steve was went A to Z there on the trade deadline around the league, and man, fascinating stuff there. He sees Ross Atkins sticking around, Tap, man.
Yeah, as he talked, I went, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But, he also, as he closed out, was talking about building the organization. But if you don't set the table at the top level, then you set the table for somebody else.
Exactly. No, it's an interesting situation in Blue Jay land. I know there's a lot of people saying, hey, they did the right thing, sold off the rentals. And there's a lot of people saying, but wait a second, do you really believe you can contend next year? Yeah. Like, where is the evidence of that? We're going to have to wait and see.
Well, yeah, we will see. Yes Guy, No Guy is next from Yes Guy headquarters, which is, I think it's a broadcasting first. We'll see.
Wow.
This is Overdrive on TSN2, also on TSN 1050 iHeartRadio app, and also streaming online.
Yes Guy, No Guy.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for Yes Guy, No Guy on Overdrive, fully sanctioned, and Doogie has the Yes Guy, No Guy list. Go ahead, sir.
Here we go, boys. Another edition of Yes Guy, No Guy on Overdrive. What a collaboration. Well, we saw Canada's women's national team pick up a 1-0 victory and advance to the knockout stage at the Olympics. So my Yes Guy, No Guy to you guys. Canada is guaranteed to win a medal at the Olympics. Yes Guy, No Guy.
Guaranteed. I got to say no guy. I'm not saying they won't, but guaranteed. Guaranteed's a tough word. I'm going to say no guy to that. Hate to do it, but that doesn't mean that it won't happen.
I'm a no guy as well, because there's a little thing called the German women's national team that they've got to beat in the quarterfinals to get into that Final Four to give themselves a chance at that medal. They don't have a great record against Germany. They're the world number 4. It's going to be a tough game. Like, this is not a great quarterfinal matchup for Canada. So it's anything but a guarantee. But I don't think it's impossible, because this team is revved up. They are absolutely on fire, and I wouldn't put anything past them.
All right, guys, let's shift our focus to the MLB trade deadline, which wrapped up at 6 p.m. Right, Tatti? Not about 6 p.m., 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. on the nose.
Yeah.
Yes Guy, No Guy. The Blue Jays were winners at the MLB trade deadline this season.
I'm going to say yes, Guy. I mean, they had to at least clear off all their expiring contracts. They did. And so because of that, I'm going to say they absolutely won their version of the trade deadline. First order of business is done. The money's there. Now, of course, they have to spend it properly. But the wording is the trade deadline. So that's a yes, Guy.
See, I'm a no guy on this. And by the way, Mr. Tatti, it's great to get a look inside Yes Guy headquarters. I believe this is unprecedented that we're actually getting a view. You're getting a view into the legendary premises from which you've done so much magic over the years. So thanks for that. But I'm a no guy on the Blue Jays at the trade deadline because I don't buy the company line here. Like, I understand, okay, you cashed in your rentals for some prospects. Great. That's great. You needed to do that. That was overdue. The farm system was in disrepair. But this whole other, company line of we are going to contend next year, I just don't see it. I don't see how they're going to be able to do that. This team has got so many holes in it. We know about the offense that can't score runs and the lack of a run-scoring environment, as Ross Atkins likes to put it. We know about the pitching staff that, as Steve Phillips said in the previous segment, needs to be really rebuilt, especially the bullpen in a big way. These are not going to be easy tasks. They're not like one good offseason type of tasks. And I'm not sure anybody should be able to take what Ross Atkins is saying about a quick turnaround at face value.
Very fair points, guys. And before we get to the next Yes Guy, No Guy, you were speaking about Ross Atkins, and he had some pressing comments and made an apology to some Blue Jays fans throughout the season and what the performance has been recently. So take a listen. We'll get to the next question.
I'm disappointed that we're here, and it's unacceptable that we are here. And I'm sorry to our fans for that. But the things that I've alluded to about finding better complementary pieces that will help us with our roster construction, I think the opportunities, the underlying issues that we can see are clear areas that we can work on are, one, that building a better 26-man roster and the depth around it that complements, the individuals are complementing others in a better way. And especially as it relates to the run scoring, we have to find a way to create a better run scoring environment.
So that's very eye-opening and very courageous from a general manager to kind of address the crowd and say, I apologize for this season. We understand it. So based on the positivity that general manager Ross Atkins has approached here, Yes Guy, No Guy, Ross Atkins will remain the general manager by the end of next season.
By the end of next season.
So another full season of Ross Atkins.
So a year from now, he's still there.
Yes Guy.
I'm going to say no guy. I think that maybe not a year from now he's not there, but I think at the end of next year he's not there. Just because, and Steve Phillips said this, he was getting into they have to change their philosophy. And I agree with Steve. I just don't see any indication that they're willing to do that. I don't know where this goes. I'm not the most optimistic person on this subject, but I'm going to say that he won't be there at the end of next season, which is your yes guy, no guy. So that's a no guy for me.
It's a no guy for me too. I mean, there's just no logical way you can continue to pretend that this is the guy to run this operation. I mean, it's not making a lot of sense to me. Of course, the counter to that is if you believe Ross Atkins is the problem, then you're the same guy that says Bobby Webster's the problem with the Raptors, or that the general manager is the problem with the Maple Leafs. You might be pointing a little higher up the food chain and saying Masai Ujiri is the guy that was responsible for what's happening with everything that goes on with the Raptors. Brendan Shanahan's responsible for the fact they've won one playoff series in Leafland in 10 years. And Mark Shapiro is the guy we should be pointing at here, not Ross Atkins, who's falling on his sword with apologies and a lot of corporate bafflegab as he explains himself for another underachieving season. But how can you really believe the plan, guys, when these are the same guys who said, we're going to have internal improvement? They went through an offseason where everybody in town was saying, you need to improve the offense. You need to improve the offense. They did nothing significant to improve the offense. And what do you know? They're 27th in Major League Baseball in runs. It's not about a run-scoring environment. It's about scoring runs, and they don't do that. And I'm not sure there's an easy road to changing that.
Very fair points, guys. So we'll do one more quick one. It's going to stay on the Blue Jays subject because that's been the story of the town for the last couple of days here. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will be a Blue Jay in 3 years from now.
Oh, yes, guy. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. They got to firm him up, and he has found the elixir. He's repaired himself. This is not a guy you trade. This would be a bad day for the opposition or for the operation if you were to trade him. So that's I guess the answer is yes, guy. He's still there.
Oh, it's a big yes, guy. It's a no-brainer. They're gonna keep Vladdy. I mean, for a lot of reasons, and one of the reasons, obviously, is yes, he's really bounced back this season. He's been much more productive of late. The other reason is he is your most popular player. He's your most identifiable player. And a lot of what we're talking about here, guys, a lot of the reasons they're not taking any other road other than trying to contend next year, when there are a lot of people who might suggest they do other things to try and do a fuller rebuild of this organization. We all know what they are. It's the ballpark with the $400 million reno. It's having to keep bums in seats, having to keep the fans coming. You don't trade your biggest star. You keep him in town, you sign him to a long-term deal, and you do what you can to make good on these promises that seem at this moment slightly outlandish.
Doogie, thanks very much for conducting Yes Guy, No Guy. Appreciate it. And really, Fess, what you're saying is this is not a bottom-out situation. We'll explore that next. Coming up at the top of the hour, Claire Rustad will be by to talk about Canadian national women's soccer team winning at the Olympics and advancing to the quarters. Rod Black will be by at 6:30. And coming up next, Dave and I are going to chew on a few things. This is Overdrive on TSN 1050, TSN 2, the iHeartRadio app, and also streaming online. Oh, yes, guy. Welcome back to Overdrive. Jim, Tatti, and Dave Feschuk manning the studio, the controls, whatever you want to say. We're manning something. Anyway, Overdrive is brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. So just a couple of things, Dave, to go over. Clearly when we talk about the Jays and how this thing tracks forward, cannot afford to do the Baltimore Orioles and stay down at the depth of Major League Baseball standings for 3 or 4 years.
Well, not in the current situation. You're right. I mean, this team's never been built for that. There's never been an appetite for it from the front office. And certainly not after you dump $400 million into ballpark renovations and jack ticket prices in a very big way. You're not going to say, hey, by the way, we're going to lose 100 games next year and try and rebuild our farm system a la the Baltimore Orioles. It's not a strategy they can do. But on the other hand, you like to believe that you could, if you were, on a different strategic path, Jim, look at trading guys that had more value than just a bunch of guys that gave you a bunch of minor leaguers, a la the Gossmans and the Bassetts of the world, to actually try and find some more assets that I think you're going to need. Because let's face it, they just don't have enough guys right now. You had this whole basket of players they just, let go out the door. They were all supposed to be contributing players on what they thought was going to be a playoff team. Like Kevin Kiermaier and Justin Turner and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. When they came to Toronto, everybody was saying, wow, or Ross Atkins was saying, these guys can help us win. Suddenly all they fetch is a bunch of maybes, a bunch of lottery tickets, a bunch of minor leaguers that may or may not hit. They need a lot more than that if they're going to go from what they are right now to something that can contend to be an actual World Series winner.
Yeah, but really they had no choice. Just a quick thought, because they're going to run out of time at the top of the hour. I mean, they depleted their farm system to get where they got to.
Yeah, that's true. And we all know the story, going back to the beginning of the Mark Shapiro era, of Shapiro scolding Alex Anthopoulos for emptying the cupboards in pursuit of playoff glory. That, of course, was a real misunderstanding of where Toronto sports was at. Anthopoulos was very right to do that. They had a 22-year playoff drought, as the longest in North American sports, Jim. But you're right; it got us to where we are now. It was a problem they needed to start remedying, and now they've started.
Canada 1, Colombia 0. Women's Olympic soccer will be back to wrap it up on Overdrive, TSN 2 and TSN 1050.